This is Prince Handley coming to you with 100,000 watts of pure love. The voice of Israel and for Israel. I want to talk to you today about Israel and the United States. Economic survival. First, let's talk about what is happening now in the economy. The USA is on a crash course for collision. The recent bailouts of financial and credit institutions by the United States government are only slowing down the ultimate collision. These bailouts are analogous to foam sprayed on airport runways to enable aircraft to crash land with minimal damage. There is, however, one big difference. The landing will not be easy. There will be a collision. The bailouts are only serving two purposes. Number one, slowing down or delaying the crash. Number two, anesthetizing the public to the unavoidable crash. Deflation may happen before rampant inflation takes off again, or even stagflation, which is rising prices with reduction in production. Outside of house mortgages, the biggest debts are credit cards and automobile loans. Automobiles are not worth going in debt over. Save your money and pay cash for autos. They do not have to be new. Get out of debt, especially on items you do not want to lose to foreclosure or repossession. Banks will probably cut interest rates to zero, making it free to borrow money, in order to curb the economy from sliding into further recession. The government is not telling you the truth. Why? Because both sides of the political spectrum are at fault. Plus, they know pandemonium will break out if you, the public, know what is going on and where we are headed. In the USA, the government does not worry about money for bailouts because the government just borrows the money from our children and grandchildren in the future. But the two things the government cannot borrow are time and energy. So how does this affect Israel and other nations in the world? Because the economies of the major producers in the world are inextricably connected, at least at this time, with the U.S. dollar, all economies of major nations will suffer. The U.S. and global economies are deteriorating more rapidly than was true even a few weeks ago. The USA uses 25% of the world's oil, but it only has 2% of the known reserves. For years, the USA has helped Saudi Arabia with military protection in exchange for oil. When the Wahhabi Islamic fundamentalist movement overthrows the Saudi hierarchy, then the world scene concerning oil would change. The last big frontiers of oil discoveries were the Alaska Northern Slope, Siberia, and the North Sea. These happened in 1967, 68, and 69. Today, there are about 58 countries that are producing less oil today than they have in the past. In a future podcast, I'm going to cover more on oil and the cataclysmic happenings that will happen as a result of decreasing oil supplies. We are looking at multi-generational resource wars. What do I mean by that? That in the future, our children and grandchildren will have to fight in order to obtain access to oil. There are only two alternatives. Number one, militarize the population. Persuade them that in order to maintain our present lifestyle, we need to face the fact that we will be in continuous wars in order to obtain and guarantee the flow of oil. Or, number two, develop new alternative energy resources that are cleaner, more efficient, and safer, as well as eco-friendly. Either option is developing a pathway for the coming leader of the New World Order, the false Messiah, who will deceive Israel with a 7-year treaty in exchange for Israel giving up all or part of Jerusalem as well as other land concessions. As a concession, he, the false Messiah, will allow Israel to build her temple on or near the present Temple Mount. However, in the middle of the 7 years, he, the false Messiah, will go into the temple and blaspheme God, also declaring that he himself is God. Then will begin the time of greatest persecution the Jewish people have ever known, greater than the Holocaust under Hitler and Nazi Germany. So what do the people of God need to do? Messianic believers in Israel, in the USA, and in other nations of the world need to trim their spiritual lights. Motivation comes from two things, you and other people. There is extrinsic motivation, which comes from others, and intrinsic motivation, which comes from within you. King David was motivated internally. He said, "What time I'm afraid, I will trust in the Lord." Also, when his men were talking about stoning him after their loss at Ziklag, David encouraged himself in the Lord. As a result, he was rewarded externally by God. Rewards can also be organized as extrinsic or intrinsic. Extrinsic rewards are external to the person, for example, praise or money. Intrinsic rewards are internal to the person, for example, satisfaction or a feeling of accomplishment. Gratification is the positive emotional response of happiness in response to a fulfillment of a desire. For the coming economy, first of all, strive for the things that bring you satisfaction internally, the things that will make you happy in accomplishing desires. Here is the answer. Trust in the Lord and do good, so you will dwell in the land, and truly you will be fed. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way unto the Lord, trust also in him, and he will bring it to pass. You can read that in Psalm 37, verses 3 through 5. I'm going to give you a true miracle economic model from the Word of God in the Tanakh. It's from 2 Kings chapter 4. Now a certain woman, the wife of one of the sons of the prophets, came crying to Elisha and said, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and to your knowledge he was a worshiper of the Lord. But now the creditor has come to take my 2 children as servants in payment for my husband's debt." Then Elisha said to the widow, "What am I to do for you? Say now, what have you in the house?" And the widow said, "Your servant has nothing in the house but a pot of oil." Then he said, "Go out to all your neighbors and get vessels. Borrow many, a very great number of them. Then go in, shutting the door on yourself and your sons. Pour oil into all these vessels, putting on one side the full ones." So the widow went away, and when the door was shut on her and her sons, they took the vessels to her, and she put oil into them. And when all the vessels were full, she said to her son, "Get me another vessel." And he said, "There are no more." And the flow of oil was stopped. Notice that as long as she had vessels to put the oil in, the miracle of multiplication continued. So she came to the man of God and gave him word of what she had done. And Elisha said, "Go and get money, sell the oil, and make payment for your debt, and let the rest be for the needs of yourself and your sons." This is the word of the Lord for you. Eliminate expenses that are not necessary. Cut entertainment to a minimum. Start spending time as a family together. Find enjoyable ways to conserve by working and playing together. Ask God what vessels you are to use, financial instruments, hard cash or items of liquidity, precious metals, credit cards, financial accounts, and so forth, but they have to be something you have access to now, or that you have means by which to obtain access. Then fill them up. The Spirit of God, the Ruach Elohim, will reveal to you how to do this. Then convert all non-liquid assets in the vessels to liquidity, or to hard tradable commodities. And then hold them. Hold the liquid hard assets. Do not release them. Hold them for times of limited hardship where you may need them. Or maybe you will have a friend who needs help. Protect these liquid hard assets by whatever means you must, because the enemy of your soul, the devil, Satan, knows that you have them, and he will try to steal them from you if you are negligent in their protection. And by the way, protection includes praying and declaring the blood of Yeshua HaMashiach over them, as well as over yourself and your household. Store food. Give to the Lord, and that can include giving to the poor and needy, no less than 10% of the income and resources that come into you. Give that 10% away right away. Now, if God tells you to hold on to these fund resources, the 10% for a while, He will have a reason for doing so. So if He tells you to hold them for a while, until He reveals to you what He wants you to do with them, separate them into a holding area by themselves. And then when God tells you what He wants you to do with them, disperse them. But do not use them for yourself. Remember, the God of Israel is the same today as He was in the time of Elisha and the widow. I trust this will help you. This has been your friend, Prince Handley. Baruch haba b'Shem Adonai.